It has been over a year since Elon Musk's DOGE dismantled USAID. In February 2025, Musk wrote that he spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper. Musk's decision to dismantle USAID has been devastating, from dwindling food assistance to soaring cases of HIV/AIDS, malaria, and now an outbreak of Ebola. According to a 2025 study by Lancet, there has been an estimated 780,000 deaths, more than 500,000 of them children, and an estimated 14 million more deaths by 2030, more than 4.5 million of them children. The cuts led to the closure of HIV clinics in South Africa, the termination of medical programs in Afghanistan, and the end of numerous programs that tackled malnutrition and preventable diseases. After DOGE dismantled USAID, the Trump destroyed nearly 500 metric tons of emergency high-energy biscuits meant to feed starving children in Afghanistan and Pakistan that was already paid for at the end of Biden's term, costing the American taxpayer $130,000. The State Department asserted that distributing the food as part of foreign aid could benefit terrorists, but the food could have fed 1.5 million children for a week. In May 2025, USAID suspended nearly $500 million in global food and agriculture developmental funding. The suspension of the food aid will hurt U.S. farmers. USAID has historically purchased approximately $2 billion worth of agriculture products from U.S. farmers annually. The loss of contracts left farmers without a market. More on this from CBS News.
What are the farmers telling you about the potential impact of these new cuts?
Hey there, Vlad. I have been speaking with farmers throughout the Midwest, and they say that in all this talk about America first with this rescissions package, lawmakers seem to forget that American farmers are going to be severely impacted by these cuts. As you mentioned, when you have programs like Food for Peace, which meant that the U.S. federal government was spending about $2 billion, more than $2 billion, on sending food to other countries, starving children in other countries, that food was all purchased from American farmers. And so right now, given all of the uncertainty that already existed with tariffs and trade policies, these farmers say that they're going to have some significant problems because now there's going to be not as many buyers because the federal government has been eliminated, and that's one of the biggest purchasers. And now there's going to be an oversupply of product. All of that's going to mean that some farms are not going to make it. I spoke with the head of the Iowa Farmers Union. Here's what he had to say.
For the ones really on the edge, they won't be able to make it through. Others are going to make tough decisions that will be very difficult to pass through these tough times to get to the good times. In the meantime, yes, our individual farmers might be hurt. There might be some going through bankruptcy, but we're all going to feel it.
And another head of a farmers union, this one in Kansas, said that that Food for Peace program is currently on life support. Of course, the farmers here are hopeful that somehow with the other legislation that's either being considered to move some of those programs over to USDA or the State Department, that there may be an avenue for reinstating these programs. But right now, they are deeply, deeply concerned, Vlad.
The Trump administration is planning to destroy $9.7 million in contraceptives at the end of July that have already been paid for by American taxpayers, and that will cost the American taxpayers an additional $180 and $60,000 to destroy. The contraceptives include IUDs, implants, and pills with expiration dates ranging from 2027 to 2031 that were intended for girls and women in low-income countries, particularly sub-Saharan Africa crisis zones and refugee camps. Several international humanitarian organizations, including MSI and the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, offered to buy the supplies from the U.S., but they rejected the offer. The kinds of products are meant to work before fertilization to prevent pregnancy, but the State Department referred to them as abortifacient birth control commodities, referring to substances that cause the termination of a pregnancy. The government cited a policy called the Mexico City policy that restricts foreign non-governmental organizations from using federal funds to provide abortion services or related information as grounds for rejecting their offer. In a typical year, these products would prevent 8.1 million unattended pregnancies, 5.2 million unsafe abortions, and 34,000 maternal deaths. The dismantling of USAID, the Trump administration withdrawing from the World Health Organization, and the cuts to the U.S. Center for Disease Control have hampered the response to the current Ebola outbreak in Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. Dr. Craig Spencer, an emergency physician, appeared on Democracy Now! To talk about the impacts of USAID cuts on the Ebola outbreak.
A year ago, that Elon Musk gleefully declared that they were throwing USAID into the wood chipper. And you may recall that Elon Musk also sheepishly said at his first cabinet meeting that he mistakenly canceled Ebola prevention but turned it back on. For many folks, the story ended there, but what actually happened was there was an Ebola outbreak, and DOGE and Elon Musk cut all the support that we normally would have been giving to respond to that Ebola outbreak. The result was that exactly USAID, who in the past would have been supporting things like airport screening in Uganda, was not providing that logistical or financial support. USAID and other partners would have been providing support to make sure testing was adequate, to make sure a vaccine rollout could have taken place, but we didn't have USAID on the ground. Similarly, CDC has long had relationships in this part of the continent, in Congo and in Uganda. And a lot of those relationships have broken down and withered over the past year because we just haven't been paying. Similarly, the U.S. has pulled out of the World Health Organization over the last year, which means that in normal circumstances, our CDC folks are not able to even talk to World Health Organization people, something that is absolutely unbelievable and an incredible mistake for something that we should be able to do and be prepared for at all points. And the result is what we've seen over the past couple of weeks with hantavirus, we've seen with the dramatic increase in number of measles cases in the U.S., and now Ebola in DR Congo and across the border in Kampala. This is not all just a coincidence. This is a consequence of us cutting back our support, not only here at home, but also abroad.
Nicholas Enrich is a former civil servant who worked at USAID under 4 administrations and author of the new book, Into the Wood Chipper, a whistleblower's account of how the Trump administration shredded USAID, appeared on Morning Joe to talk about his book.
So let's start with, if you could, just briefly remind viewers what this organization is charged to do and the difference that it makes.
Sure. USAID was the agency that delivered foreign aid on behalf of the American public. So it was the embodiment of American generosity overseas, and over the last 2 decades saved 92 million lives on a budget that's about less than 1% of the federal budget. It also kept Americans safe from things like infectious diseases and built partnerships.
Right, and it's American soft power. It's not just an act of charity. It's our strategic interests are also being advanced by it. So what happened then when Trump came in for his second term and empowered Elon Musk and his DOGE minions to start looking at that agency?
Well, about 2 weeks into the Trump administration, Elon Musk tweeted he just spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper. And I was the top global health official at the time at the agency. And so I had a front row seat to the destruction, the ignorance, the indifference of him and his team and the Trump administration. And in my new book, I'm hoping to show readers a look of what it looked like actually inside of that wood chipper, and to show kind of the impossible decisions that that civil servants were forced to make as our programs collapsed, with millions of lives hanging in the balance.
So, Nicholas, you did an interview with ABC where you talked about how you never got to have a meeting with DOGE, and so I want you to talk about that. But also this shocking, where the chief of staff looked at him stunned and said they had no idea what USA did. So, can you explain to us?
Sure. I think I would explain by saying that you could fit the Trump administration officials that came to USAID into two categories: those who were cruel and those who were buffoons. And most of the DOGE folks fell into that second category of what I call buffoons, in that they had absolutely no idea what the agency that they were trying to destroy even did. They were uninformed, they were unqualified, and they just came in with a sledgehammer.
Eugene.
Musk threatened to sue Representative Ro Khanna for defamation after he accused him of sentencing millions of children to death by dismantling USAID. Khanna wrote on Substack, "I said the cuts DOGE made to USAID are potentially a death sentence for an estimated 4.5 million children around the world." He added, "It comes straight from the first comprehensive analysis of its kind into what American foreign aid actually does," referring to the Lancet study. Musk fired back on X. He wrote, "And they cannot cite a single name of someone who died out of the millions they falsely claim have died. Not a single name." In response to Musk's attempt to downplay his primary role in the humanitarian crisis, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof listed off numerous people, including young children, who perished as a result of dismantling of foreign aid. He appeared on Pod Save America and told some of these stories.
As somebody who reported the aftermath and walked through villages, I saw people dying and talked to bereaved families of kids who had died. And that's just, it's ludicrous to propose that nobody died as a consequence. I traveled to South Sudan, for example, and found kids who had died very early on because they were HIV positive. They had been kept alive by the PEPFAR program that President Bush had started in 2003 that has saved 26 million lives so far. And I think that Musk and Trump did intend to keep much of those HIV/AIDS programs alive, but they fired the health workers who had been the connector between the system and the kids who were receiving these, often AIDS orphans who were receiving the benefits. And so if you've got a, 8-year-old kid, for example, who is on ARVs to prevent AIDS, and, how is that kid possibly going to navigate the system to manage to get those medicines? And so, one boy called Peter Donde died. Another, Evan Anzu, died. There were a number of, these kids who had died that health workers told me about. Then in Liberia, for example, dropped in one village and a child had just died of malaria because the malaria medications, they had been supplied, in some cases supported by the U.S., but maybe more important, the U.S. had supported the pipeline that transported them from the warehouses in the capital to the individual clinics. And without that pipeline, all of a sudden, things collapsed. And if this had happened over time, if the U.S. had said, look, a year from now, we're going to stop that pipeline, Uganda might have been able to adjust, but it happened right in the middle of a fiscal year. And there was no time to make these adjustments, so that little child died. A woman, that Yama Freeman, a mother of two, she, in another village in Uganda, she was in labor, she was hemorrhaging, and the U.S. had provided ambulances precisely to reduce maternal mortality in an area that had very high levels of it. And those ambulances remained there, but DOGE cut the fuel, the diesel, that had gone to power those ambulances. And so when Yama Freeman was hemorrhaging, the villagers called the ambulance and said, this woman is dying. And they said, well, send some fuel over and we will come and rescue her. But of course, they can't do that. A bunch of the strong men in the village put her in a hammock, put her on their shoulders, and they raced down this path toward the hospital, and were shouting encouragement to her. But she bled to death on the way. And, that would not have happened if, for the cost of just maintaining diesel to ambulances that we had already provided. And I could go, on and on and on. And when you go through these villages, a little girl called Jabia, everything went wrong in her case. The U.S. had provided bed nets to prevent mosquito bites and malaria. A bed net cost $2. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly cost effective. So Jabia's family, their bed net had holes. They couldn't get a new bed net. She got malaria. Normally, there would be a community health worker who would connect her to the system, get her medication. The community health workers had been fired. The clinic no longer had anti-malaria medicine. She got very, very sick and needed to be rushed to the larger hospital, but the ambulances there too had lost their fuel. And by the time she got there, she was almost dead, and she died shortly after. A fourth grade girl ranking number 3 in her very large class, dead because of the reckless way in which Musk took apart aid.
Yeah,
Musk did not take too kindly to Christoph doing exactly what he asked. He had a complete meltdown. He posted multiple times on X. He wrote, Christoph is utterly evil. In a separate post, he wrote, Christoph is lying through his teeth. And yet another post, he wrote, nothing that Christoph has said is true. He's an utter piece of shit. Elon Musk is not the only one that is denying the devastating impact of the USAID cuts. Marco Rubio and Russell Vought both deny that there has been any deaths due to these cuts.
Are you standing by every part of the world? Are you standing by your contention that no one has died
because the United States has cut aid? No.
Do you concur that multiple studies have shown that people, both adults and children, across the globe have died because of cuts to programs like USAID?
I do not concur with the validity of those studies. They are based on projected.
Do you agree that people have died across the globe because of our cuts?
I believe these studies that people are banting about.
My question is, do you believe people have died because of the cuts to USAID? It's simple, yes or no.
I do not believe that the administration.
You don't believe anyone's died?
Let me finish the question.
No, it's a yes or no.
It is.
Doctor, it's really simple. Do you think people died or not?
Cuts are aimed at.
All right, you're not going to answer it. I would claim my time. I thought you were going to be a little more helpful, Director Vogt, but that's fine.
This is what Marco Rubio said about the importance of USAID for the U.S. national security before he became a Trump sycophant.
We don't have to give foreign aid. We do so because it furthers our national interest. That's why we give foreign aid. Now, obviously, there's a component to foreign aid that's humanitarian in scope, and that's important too. I promise you it's going to be a lot harder to recruit someone to anti-Americanism, anti-American terrorism, if the United States of America was the reason why they're even alive today. Anybody who tells you that we can slash foreign aid and that will bring us to balance is lying to you. Foreign aid is less than 1% of our budget. It's just not true.
Now, those comments paint a pretty clear picture, right? He said foreign aid was critical to U.S. foreign policy. Now he's trying to dismantle the agency behind it, but that's really not all that we found. We also found that in 2022, he sent a letter to Joe Biden in which he actually suggested they increase the USAID budget. He said that it was necessary to counter Chinese Communist Party influence. China has basically their own version of USAID. And I want to read a little bit of what he wrote in that letter to Biden that we uncovered. He said, quote, "We urge you to use your fiscal year 2023 budget request for the Defense Department, Department of State, and U.S. Agency for International Development to send a clear message that the United States has a comprehensive strategy to counter the Chinese Communist Party's expanding global influence and the increasing threat that it poses to U.S. Security interests and those of our allies and partners."
I mean, well, and he is a deeply serious Secretary of State. I mean, Belt and Road Initiative by China has been something that they've invested in to counter.
And we found actually
USAID,
letters in which he, or press releases on his website where he specifically mentioned that in why we need USAID.
Right. So he makes all these points. He makes all these very important points. But he actually, from your reporting, then it wasn't even just foreign aid overall and making the point it's 1%, less than 1% of the budget, and here's why it's important. It was individual programs.
Yeah, and look, we went through his entire website, or what we could find on his website across his Senate career from 2011 to 2025, and what we found was time and again him singling out various different programs from USAID as vital parts of basically promoting American foreign policy. We found dozens of these. And I want people to look at just a few of them right here that include him praising programs combating tuberculosis in developing nations, supporting maternal and child health programs, election support in Burma, Mexico, Latin America, advancing women's global economic empowerment. And this is just a few. We found dozens and dozens of examples of him doing this. Now, we reached out to the State Department. We asked, how are you going to square all of this was what he's saying today, and we didn't hear back from them.
These deaths are on Musk's hands. To quote Bill Gates, the picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. These deaths are also on the entire Trump administration. You cannot say that you are pro-life and at the same time cheer on these deaths. I'll leave you what past presidents said about USAID.
Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal. Today, we seek to move beyond the accomplishments of the past, to establish the principle that all the people are entitled to a decent way of life.
Let us not forget that each child saved, each refugee housed, each disease prevented, each barrier to justice brought down, each sword turned into a plowshare brings us closer to peace, closer to freedom, closer to dignity.
America is a nation with a mission. And that mission comes from our most basic beliefs. Our aim is a democratic peace. A peace founded upon the dignity and rights of every man and woman.
We also know that progress in the most impoverished parts of our world enriches us all. So the United States will join with our allies to eradicate such extreme poverty in the next 2 decades by connecting more people to the global economy, by empowering women, by giving our young and brightest minds new opportunities to serve, and helping communities to feed, empower, and educate themselves. By saving the world's children from preventable deaths. That's how we'll confront the challenges of our time. This is how we will seize the promise of this moment in history. are we to believe that today's challenges cannot be overcome? When we've seen what changes the human spirit can bring. That is why we look to the future not with fear, but with hope.